Hello, Hunters, and welcome back to Super Fan Natural. Hunters, if someone came up to you and offered to give you the one thing that you want most in the entire world, what would you be willing to give them in exchange? Your money? Your home? Your family? Would you be willing to, in exchange for what is essentially a wish, be willing to trade your everlasting soul? In our world, this kind of thing is usually hypothetical. But in the world of Supernatural, selling one's soul for wealth, power, and stuff is a fairly common practice. Well, I guess if you really broke it down, it wouldn't exactly qualify as common, but there is an entire supernatural industry that revolves around getting mortals to hock their divine essence in order to nab themselves something that they just can't get through regular means. More often than not, like 98% of the time, these deals are brokered by demons in order to secure more sinful spirits for the pit. Though it is important to note that Hellspawn aren't the only ones on the market for soul power. Demon deals and soul sales are incredibly important to the story and mythos of Supernatural. In fact, you could argue that a devil's bargain is responsible for setting the entire series in motion. On the surface, these devilish dealings seem pretty simple. But as with many things in Supernatural, especially those that involve magic, there's a lot more to deals than you might think. In this video, I'll lay out the basics of demonic deals, explore how they work, and explain why anyone would want to make them in the first place. The first thing we should probably establish is why someone would want to buy a soul. I've already alluded to why a person would be in the market to sell. In exchange, they get what's essentially a wish, though the scope of what they can ask for has limits. So that part makes sense, but what exactly does a buyer get that's worth bending reality? Well, first and foremost, being able to say that you own someone's soul is just really cool. And once the transaction is complete, you have yourself the absolute perfect opening for some sick Shang Tsung RP.
Your soul is mine.
But more importantly than any of that is the power which comes from the human soul. Yeah, these little blobs of light don't just look pretty, they carry a lot of mystical power. In fact, at several points in the show, souls are compared to nuclear reactors or supernovas of pure, divine, magical energy. And with the right know-how, that juice can be used to achieve some pretty crazy shit. Thing is, it's pretty rare for any particular creature, even ones in the higher end of the power scale, to be able to tap into and use the power of a soul that isn't theirs. That's where deals come in. While there are a wide variety of bargains to be made across the supernatural multiverse, the core function of the ones featured in this video is to secure ownership of human souls so that the buyer can access their power. I'll touch on a few areas where a soul may not actually be traded, but the point here is that these types of deals are designed for acquisition of soul power. Alright, now that we know what each party gets from the exchange, let's get into the actual mechanics and business of the bargain. As I said up top, the vast majority of these soul sales are carried out by demons, mostly because they're the only ones who've made it into a full-time business. Yeah, while other players might jump on a soul deal if the opportunity presents itself, Hell has set up an entire industry to seek out, wheel and deal and damn mortals who are in the mood to sell their immortal essence for some sweet worldly gains. Usually, stories portray these kind of Faustian bargains being made with Satan himself, and to an extent, Supernatural will follow suit, sorta. I mean, I don't think we ever saw Lucifer himself make this type of soul deal, but there are times when Hell's higher-ups would come out to do business with someone personally. However, most of Damnation's sales work is actually delegated to a specific class of demon, the red-eyed crossroads demons. These fiends get their name from the fact that, in many cases, they're first summoned through a little ritual performed at a crossroads, or an intersection if you prefer modern lingo. Basically, you just put together a little box of simple hoodoo, throw in a picture of yourself, bury it somewhere where two roads meet, and if you did it all right, a red-eyed demon will appear and offer to trade that lame-ass soul for something cool. From there, you can haggle over terms, which I'll get to in a bit, but if everything sounds good, then you seal the deal with a sexy kiss on the lips, and boom, your soul has been sold. Now, I should make it clear that accepting this deal doesn't cause a person's soul to immediately be yoinked out of their meat suit and tossed into the hellfire. I mean, that can be the case, but it would be a condition that the seller would have to agree to beforehand. No, when a demon deal is made, a claim is placed on the seller's soul, a metaphysical mark of ownership that grants the spirit a one-way ticket downstairs once their life ends. It doesn't matter how you lived your life, you could be more righteous than Jesus Christ himself, but if you accepted the infernal offer, then sorry, once you croak, it's the pit for you. To make matters worse, you don't even get to live out a full life afterwards. Yeah, hell doesn't really want to wait multiple decades to claim its purchase. So, the terms of service for most deals includes a nifty little agreement which allows the demons to just come kill you after a certain amount of time. The standard allotment is 10 years, but we saw deals that gave the sellers 25 years, 8 years, 1 year, and, well, like a couple minutes. Whatever you get, it all ends the same. Once your time is up, then a hellhound will be sent to rip you apart and drag your soul into the depths of hell forever. So that's all pretty freaking terrible. But maybe, just maybe, whatever the demons are offering is worth a shortened life, horrifying death, and eternity of torture. Well, I don't think so, but depending on where your priorities lie, it just might be. As I said earlier, the biggest incentive for people to deal with demons is that they can use magic to dish out things that are extremely difficult or even impossible for regular folks to get through mortal means. For those with extremely simple tastes, hell can bestow things like wealth, success, and freedom from legal troubles. I'm pretty sure the stupidest wish we ever saw granted was a lady who traded her soul so that her husband could get a sort of impressive promotion. Actually, I'm not sure if that one's dumber than when Radek Zelenka sold his soul in exchange for his wife's assassination. That one didn't even require magic to grant, they just sent another demon to take her out. For those who aspire towards athletic, artistic, or professional skill, souls can buy that too. Through deals, demons can grant a hefty boost to one particular stat tree, allowing the seller to instantly become a world-class surgeon, architect, athlete, guitarist, painter, treasure hunter, YouTuber, gator wrestler, you name the skill, and hell will enhance it to elite levels. Speaking of enhancements, deals have at least some ability to alter the human body in unnatural ways, which we know thanks to the show's most prominent demon, Crowley, who ended up downstairs after exchanging his soul for a slightly bigger wiener. Definitely an interesting choice, but hey, the dude ended up being the king of hell for a while, so it seems like things worked out for him. Penile enhancement isn't the only bit of biomagic demons have up their sleeves. One of the most tantalizing things that hell can offer is incredible otherworldly healing, which can cure ailments way beyond the scope of modern mortal medicine. For the low price of a single soul, demons can wipe away incurable diseases and mend inoperable damage. Whatever ails you, they can make it go away and give you a decade or so of good health. Hell, through the power of a deal, demons can even heal the most severe illness of all: death. Yeah, while it's extremely rare, we do see that, in at least some instances, a demon deal can be made to resurrect the recently deceased and restore them to full working order. As far as I can remember, we only ever saw a demonic resurrection bestowed onto folks who'd been dead for a day or so max. So the limits of this type of unholy revival are fuzzy. Also, I should stress that we really don't see or hear about many people getting the Lazarus package, and the 2 times we did, it fit nicely into Hell's evil plans, so it really seems like this is an extremely rare deal that very few people actually get. Still, the ability to pull a loved one back from the other side is a powerful trick, one that might just be worth shortening your own life. For me personally, one of the most useful and versatile things that one can petition the pit for is magical powers. In the world of Supernatural, it's possible for regular people to learn how to wield the arcane forces of magic through study and practice. But if that just isn't your bag, then you can just sell your soul to hell in exchange for an instant hit of magical juice, ultimately making you a type of witch known as a borrower. Admittedly, borrowers seem to sit on the lower end of the witchy power scale, but they still get enough juju to make some crazy shit happen. With the right spells, even a lowly borrower witch can give themselves health, wealth, talent, and status. Basically, a well-read borrower can reap the benefits of multiple deals with but a single sale, and all without having to waste time training and studying like a nerd. Not only that, there are a few hints throughout the series that witch packs might have slightly different terms of service than other demonic deals. In Season 4, we saw a pair of witches that apparently served the Halloween demon Sam Hain for centuries. We don't know for sure if they were borrowers or not, but if they were, then it would indicate that, in at least some cases, a witch's contract doesn't come with an expiration date. Later, in Season 12, we saw a witch who'd exchanged her soul for a potent magical ring, and while this deal did come with a death date, the witch believed that if she could pass off the ring and its power to a willing recipient before her death, then her contract and the claim on her soul would be transferred to a new bearer. That wasn't confirmed, but if true, then it would mean that the right witch deal comes with an escape hatch. Though, if you've used the magic to kill innocent people, then you're probably doomed anyway. Also, it's heavily implied that even after the original witch died, using her ring's powers would cause the new wielder to be marked for damnation, but at least they get the power to create twig and twine dolls. So yeah, a demon deal can secure some pretty cool stuff, and for some folks, the reward might just be worth a shortened life and damned eternity. Still, whenever one considers dealing with demons, there's always the worry that they'll screw you over with tricky wording or unforeseen monkey paw-esque drawbacks. After all, these deals are made verbally, so it's not like there's a contract or specific terms and rules that you could read over to negotiate, right? Well, actually, not right. See, despite how simple and straightforward the dealing process seems, all demonic pacts actually do come with a physical contract, which bind the terms of the deal through magical legalese. These contracts can appear as physical scrolls of cartoonish length, or as marks on the client's skin, though that might just be a way of letting the person read the agreement without having to whip out the actual document. By manifesting these pacts as tangible contracts, the demons are able to concretely define the parameters, terms, and effects of the deal instead of leaving them up to vague wording or wishy-washy wish magic or something. Basically, it gives them better control over how the magic works, which you may be tempted to think is entirely for Hell's benefit. And yeah, for the most part it is. Just like with real contracts, crafty demons can use technical language in the document to skew the terms of the deal in Hell's favor. The best example of this is when Bobby made a deal with Crowley. The whole agreement was meant to be temporary, with Crowley willingly dissolving the pact once the apocalypse was averted. However, due to the way he worded the agreement, Crowley wasn't technically required to release his claim on Bobby's soul, so he didn't, at least not until he was threatened. That's pretty shitty, but hey.
That's what you get, working with a demon.
At the same time, the meaning of the contract does actually come with a few benefits for the seller. Remember how I said that these deals usually come with a specific date for soul collection? Well, it's specifically stated that if a demon tries to collect early by killing the client before their scheduled death date, then the deal is voided and Hell's claim on the spirit is relinquished. Moreover, because these pacts are manifested as physical objects, it means that it's possible to trash the whole deal by just tearing up the contract. Obviously, this isn't as easy as it sounds. Most folks never actually see their contract, and actually a good few probably don't even know they exist. Obviously, the demons are going to want to keep that precious document safely out of reach of those who'd want it terminated. So, in most situations, your best bet for burning the contract is to force the demon who holds it to just do it themselves. This can be tricky, and not just because of the threatening part. While it seems like most contracts are held by the demon who closes the deal, some end up getting passed and or seized by someone higher up in the infernal ranks. For example, Dean once made a deal with a regular random crossroads demon, but later, that Red Eyes wasn't able to undo the contract because the Queen of Hell, Lilith, had taken it. Also, in that situation, it was believed that killing Lilith would free Dean from his deal, but other points in the series make it seem like that's not how contracts work, so I'm not entirely sure what was going on there. Maybe the rules changed, maybe things are different when you're dealing with the ruler of Hell, or maybe the team was just wrong. It's also not fully clear how the contracts work after the seller is dead and damned. Like, do they still hold any actual magical legal weight, or does getting damned and dragged to Hell fulfill the requirements of the deal? We do see that it is possible for people who have been damned via deals to not only escape Hell, but also find salvation in heaven. Thing is, there's only two examples of this, John and Dean Winchester, both of whom were kind of special cases due to their divine destinies. Both Dean and his dad could serve as vessels for the Archangel Michael, and in fact, Dean wasn't just a vessel, he was Mike's perfect vessel, the one who was meant to use to fight Lucifer during the apocalypse. So, not only were these two of interest to heaven, they were key players in the story of God's second in command. If anyone was going to get special treatment, it'd be them. As for anyone else who manages to slip out of the pit after making a damning deal, unclear. It is eventually revealed, or rather retconned, that anyone who's ever been sent to Hell is permanently barred from entering heaven unless God himself grants an exception. If true, then it would mean that in most cases, the best an escapee could hope for would be to hide out in the Veil or as a ghost. Also, for anyone saying that Eileen managed to come back to life and didn't have to worry about demons coming after her, she didn't end up in Hell due to a deal. She was just killed by a hellhound and I guess was a bad person in life. Hey guys, future editing Jack here. I just wanted to pop in and say that I know Bobby also found salvation in heaven after being in hell, but that still doesn't count because he didn't end up downstairs due to a deal. It was just Crowley being petty. Speaking of going to hell without making a deal, it's worth mentioning that we do see a few cases of the opposite happening. People making a deal with demons, but not ending up in the pit. While extremely rare, there are a few instances of demons making deals with people and granting them a wish, but not claiming their soul. The best example comes from the Prince of Hell Azazel. An integral part of the story is that Old Yellow Eyes spent decades seeking out seemingly random individuals whom he would offer a very unique deal. In exchange for a miracle, he wouldn't give up their soul, but rather, they'd be giving him permission to feed their future children some demonic blood as part of an apocalyptic ritual. It's important to note that, despite leaving the details of the arrangement vague, Azazel specifically told Mary Winchester that she would keep her soul when haggling for her boyfriend John's revival. And we see that this was more or less true. After her death, Mary wasn't dragged into hell. Instead, she lived on as a ghost. It may seem like a minor detail, but it shows that it is possible for at least some demons to give out magical rewards without claiming the victim's soul. For another example, there's Luther Shrike, a man who was able to blackmail a Crossroads demon into giving him a form of immortality. Admittedly, we don't know the exact specific details of his deal. It is fully possible that Luther's soul was marked and just couldn't be collected, but regardless, it still shows that not all demon deals operate the same. We also see that it's possible to amend an existing deal in such a way that Hell's claim on the soul is relinquished, but the client gets to keep the magical perks that they originally sold for. That's what happened with Bobby's contract. He forced Crowley to let his soul go, but leave his legs functional. Actually, that raises an interesting question. What is the exact relationship between souls and the miracles that demons trade them for? Like, it's explicitly stated that demons can't do things like revive the righteous dead without a deal. But then, does that mean that just the act of making a deal grants them the necessary magic? As you might expect, the exact mechanics of deal magic is never really explained in detail. But it does seem like the power comes from souls rather than some sort of contract magic. It's stressed repeatedly that souls are incredibly powerful little batteries of pure magical energy, and that by tapping into that power, it's possible to bend reality and pull off feats that are normally out of reach. The best evidence for souls fueling the deal magic come from Bobby's deal. That contract was made specifically to grant Crowley the power needed to perform a potent spell, with Crowley specifically affirming that he needed Bobby to make a deal so that he could access his spirit energy. So then, case closed? The wishes are powered by the wishmaker's soul? Well, maybe in some cases, but there does seem to be more to it than that. After all, how could Azazel resurrect John without claiming Mary's soul? I mean, yeah, some requests don't technically need magic, but reviving the dead definitely does. In cases like that, I personally believe that the magic is powered by souls already in Hell's bank. Basically, the contracts don't just give the demons one-time access to the client's soul power. Instead, the claim of ownership makes the magical Sun Hell's property, meaning that once it's downstairs, the pit's leadership can juice the thing until it runs dry, extracting its energy whenever the need arises. This idea of contractual ownership giving access to soul's energy would also help resolve a bit of weirdness that was never really addressed. In Season 9, we saw that it's possible for demons to just directly rip a person's soul out of their body against their will. The Knight of Hell Abaddon set up a number of these soul snatcher operations with the intent to create a demon army from the stolen goods. And while this is an absolutely diabolical plan, it does raise the question, why don't demons just do this all the time? Why make deals and grant wishes if you just yoink folks off the street? Well, it makes sense if we accept that ownership, or at least permission, is required for proper access to the soul's energy. Soul snatch unwillingly may be susceptible to demonification, but tapping that sweet spiritual power would be more difficult, if not impossible, at least for demons. I want to stress that this isn't confirmed, but I personally think it makes a lot of sense. Alright, so by now, y'all should have a decent understanding of the risks and reward of dealing with demons. To wrap up this video, I want to go over who all can even make deals. Like, can any demon buy a human soul? Well, technically we don't know for sure, but I'm inclined to say no. Otherwise, why would there be a specific subspecies of demon tasked with dealing? As I said earlier, most deals are made by Crossroads demons, and I'm fairly sure that the ability to make deals is what gives them their red eyes and differentiates them from their black-eyed colleagues. Now, we do know for a fact that deal-making isn't exclusively a red-eyed demon power. As I said earlier, the yellow-eyed Prince of Hell Azazel made many deals throughout his career. And while we didn't actually see a white-eyed demon make a soul deal, Lilith offered to make one with Sam. It is worth noting that in both of these cases, the non-red-eyed demon in question was seemingly the ruler of Hell at the time. So while I personally believe that these elite demons just naturally have the power to deal, there is an argument to be made that the deal magic is limited to Crossroads demons and the big boss who sits on the infernal throne. Either way, it kind of seems like black-eyed demons are the only ones who can't buy souls. But we do know that it is actually possible for them to pull it off in some situations. Remember how I mentioned borrower witches selling their souls in exchange for magical powers? Well, the first few borrower witches we saw in the show were given their powers by the black-eyed Astroth. And in at least the case of the Housewife Book Club, the bargain was made under some pretty questionable terms. Instead of appearing before the targets and directly offering them the exchange, an incognito Astaroth just hooked the women up with her Book of Shadows, and by simply performing the rituals and incantations within the pages, these clueless housewives traded their souls for the demon's power. Granted, they had to say things like, "We offer ourselves to the Dark Master," but come on, this still feels sleazy. I believe that this is the only time we see a black-eyed demon make a soul deal, which makes me wonder if Astaroth was just exceptionally powerful, or if witch pacts work a little differently. Maybe she could empower aspiring witches because she herself was a natural witch, and thus had her own juice to loan out? No clue. I just think it's interesting that the only time we see a black-eyed demon make a pact, it's under such unusual circumstances. And that's about it. Those are the ins and outs of demonic deals and soul sales in Supernatural. Let me know in the comments what, if anything, you'd be willing to sell your soul for. I'll have more content for you soon, but for now, carry on.